A boy who wanted to be a Cinderella. Chapter 1. The boy who dreamed of a prince. Ivo was the youngest of 4. He had fair skin and a soft appearance, with a slight pink hue that made him stand out from the other boys. With slightly light brown hair and a beautiful smile, Ivo was often mistaken for a girl. Upon meeting him for the first time, people would often exclaim, oh my, you are fairer than your sisters. What a shame! If only you were a girl." Little Ivo would simply smile and reply, "But I am a boy, and I also want to find my handsome prince." Whenever Ivo expressed his wish, the adults would laugh and say, "Oh Ivo, you are the boy, you will only marry a girl." On the first Saturday evening of each year, when the kingdom's prince had reached a mature age suitable for marriage, all the eligible ladies in town were invited to the castle until the prince found a potential princess. Ivo sat on a stool, watching his sisters dress in beautiful gowns, each choosing a different color. Yellow for the first sister, pink for the second sister, and purple for the third. Their mother rushed around, doing their hair, selecting matching jewelry, and helping them with makeup. Ivo sat there with his little legs dangling from the chair, swinging back and forth, wishing he could be part of it. When his eldest sister turned around and asked, "Little brother, do I look all right?" Ivo's face lit up. "Big sister, you don't just look all right, you look amazing," he exclaimed, then hesitated before adding, "I wish I could go too." His 3 sisters burst into laughter. "Oh Ivo, no, not now. Maybe if the queen becomes pregnant again and gives birth to a 5th child, who happens to be a princess, and the king decides to host another ball, then you can attend." Ivo suddenly stood up, his face flushed with frustration, his fists clenched tightly. With a bright red face he shouted, "I don't want a girl, I want a boy." He stormed out of the room as his sisters and mother burst into even louder laughter. "Ouch," one of the sisters teased. "You're so adorable when you get angry." Ivo ran to his little corner, buried himself under his blanket, and began to cry. In his heart he knew he wanted a prince, not a princess. Why was it so hard for adults to understand? That same night, as Ivo slept deeply, he dreamed of finding his prince. In the midst of his slumber, he heard a soft, comforting voice whispering in his ear. It felt as though someone was gently calling his name. Slowly he opened his eyes, unsure if he was still dreaming. As his vision adjusted, he saw a dusky blue neon light growing brighter. Then, out of nowhere, a little blue fairy appeared, handsome, well-dressed, and carrying the sweet scent of jasmine. Ivo's eyes widened with excitement. He was so thrilled that he almost screamed. "Not a word to anyone," the blue fairy whispered as he flew closer to Ivo's face. "I am here to help you find your prince when you grow up. I know there are many boys like you who dream of finding their prince, but not many are as courageous as you to speak their truth. However, this journey will not be easy. It will require great courage, patience, and support." Ivo's heart swelled with excitement. The thought that there were other boys like him filled him with joy. He was so thrilled that he nearly screamed again, but before he could, the little blue fairy cast a spell to stop him. "Forgive me for doing this," the fairy said gently. "I don't want anyone else to know about me just yet. First, you must believe with all your heart that you will find your prince. This journey will be long and difficult. No matter how many times you are let down, laughed at, or teased, you must never lose your innocence. Never give up." The fairy's expression turned serious as he continued. "The world can be cruel, but never lose sight of who you are and what you believe in." Finally, the blue fairy gave Ivo a warning. "To find your prince, you must prepare for a lonely journey. There will be times of disappointment. The greatest challenge is that you won't always know who among the other men is like you, who is also searching for a prince." Then, with a soft smile, he added, "Now, I'm going to release the spell. But please, try not to scream." As soon as the spell lifted, Ivo couldn't contain himself. "There are other boys like me," he gasped, jumping up and down in excitement. "Other boys are also looking for princes?" Hearing the commotion, his mother rushed into the room, thinking he had another nightmare. But instead of a frightened child, she found an overjoyed Ivo bouncing up and down on his bed. "What are you doing awake at this hour?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Ivo ran to her, eager to tell her about the blue fairy. He pointed excitedly at his bed, trying to explain everything at once. But in his excitement, his words tumbled out too fast, making no sense at all. "Slow down, Ivo," his mother said, holding his shoulders. "I can't understand a single word. Blue what?" Desperate to share his discovery, Ivo turned back toward the bed, but the fairy was gone. "He's gone!" Ivo cried. "Who is?" his mother asked. "The blue fairy!" His mother exhaled, relieved. At least this time it wasn't a monster. She shook her head with a tired smile. "First, you wanted to marry a prince. Now you're seeing fairies. Well, at least it's not an eating monster this time." Ivo hugged his mother's legs and looked up at her with bright, hopeful eyes. "I will have a prince one day," he whispered with a beautiful, innocent smile. The kind of smile that softened hearts, the kind that made people naturally drawn to him. His mother sighed, stroking his hair. She knew that smile all too well. It was the light that made Ivo who he was. A Boy Who Wanted to Be a Cinderella. Chapter 2. The Lake and the Stranger. Time flew by, and Ivo had grown into a gentle, kind-hearted and sincere young man of 18. His fair skin still carried a slight pink hue, and he remained a little shy, not too tall, and often kept to himself. Unlike other young men his age, who eagerly sought out potential wives, Ivo had no interest in finding one. Despite this, he was constantly approached by ladies in town who showed great interest in him. Known for his kindness and natural empathy, as well as his intelligence and education, he was admired by many. However, by now, Ivo had come to the painful realization that finding his prince would never be possible. He understood the expectations of society, the rigid roles of gender, and what was deemed acceptable in the kingdom. He could not even remember the last time he had dared to say aloud that he wanted a prince instead of a princess. Yet deep down, he still hoped, just a little, that one day he might find someone who would enjoy his company. He knew the chances were slim, so slim that he had quietly resigned himself to the idea of living alone for the rest of his days. When he tried to recall his last encounter with the blue fairy, he could no longer tell if it had been real, or just a childhood dream. Ivo was grateful, at least, that his family, his sisters and parents, had never pressured him to find a wife. It was almost an unspoken understanding, a quiet acceptance of who he was. He was still somewhat naive about the world, but his heart was pure. He sacrificed for others not because he needed validation, but because love and respect came naturally to him. One of Ivo's greatest joys was taking long walks early in the morning. He had discovered a secret oasis, a place hidden away from the rest of the world. It was covered in wildflowers, with a lake overlooking the city, and in the summertime he loved to swim there. When it was just him, the water, the sun, and the distant hum of insects, the world felt still. In those moments he felt safe, he felt happy. Like any other summer morning, Ivo made his way to the lake for a quiet, refreshing swim. The sky stretched above him like silky blue fabric, the sun warm against his skin. As he floated in the gentle water, his eyes half closed in bliss. Splash! A sudden wave crashed against him, pushing him backward toward the rocky bank. Before he could react, a young man, about his age, emerged from the water and reached for him, gripping his arm firmly and pulling him close, afraid Ivo might hit the rocks. "Are you okay?" The stranger's voice was warm, his expression filled with concern. "I'm so sorry." "Oh, hello," he grinned, bright and carefree. Ivo blinked, momentarily stunned. "Hi, my name is George. How are you? Are you here alone?" The young man had slightly darker skin and broad shoulders, still holding Ivo's arm as if to steady him. Ivo thought, what a handsome young man. George, with his big, curious eyes, smiled again. "Are you sure you're okay?" Snapping back to reality, Ivo quickly nodded, feeling embarrassed. "Yes, I'm fine. I just wasn't expecting anyone to be here." He gently pushed George's arm away and swam backward, putting a little space between them. George chuckled. "Oh, did I intrude?" He playfully splashed some water at Ivo's face. "Hey, stop that, we just met," Ivo protested, laughing despite himself. "Exactly, and you haven't even told me your name yet," George teased, splashing more water at him. Ivo splashed back and finally answered, Ivo John Smith." George burst into laughter. "How formal, and here we are, both pretty much naked in the water. No need for such formalities." Ivo couldn't help but smile. This was the first time in a long while that he felt so light-hearted. A Boy Who Wanted to Be a Cinderella. Chapter 3. A Birthday Wish and a Box of Chocolate. Ivo sat at the dinner table, waiting. His eyes were fixed on the table, his heart pounding so loudly he was convinced everyone in the dining hall could hear it. George still hadn't arrived. For the past few weeks they had spent almost every morning together at the lake. It had become Ivo's favorite part of the day. He couldn't wait for the sun to set, just so he could wake up and see George again. This is hopeless, Ivo thought. He probably just sees me as a friend. What if I make a fool of myself again? What if... His mind raced with anxious thoughts. Am I dressed too fancy? Too colorful? Oh no. Do I smell all right? His heart clenched. What if he realizes I have feelings for him? What then? A shadowy figure approached. Ivo looked up and saw George standing in front of him, his usual charming smile in place. Ivo jumped to his feet so quickly that he nearly knocked everything off the table. George chuckled. You really are excited to see me, aren't you? Ivo's face instantly turned bright red. Standing before him was a well-groomed, handsome young man, his warm smile as irresistible as ever. As summer faded and the water grew colder, they still met by the lake, though now only to talk. It was George who had suggested they go out for dinner, after discovering that Ivo's birthday was just around the corner. Ivo had been thrilled, but also nervous. He remembered going home that evening, kneeling beside his bed for the first time in years, and whispering a prayer. Please God, I do not need another one of your jokes. If this is just another one, please make it stop now. I don't think I can handle getting my hopes up again. Now, sitting across from George at dinner, Ivo swallowed his nerves as the candlelight flickered between them. It was just a joke, George suddenly blurted out, his face also turning red. Ivo blinked. What was? George hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, beautifully wrapped in paper with a bright red ribbon. Happy birthday, Ivo. Ivo's eyes widened. Oh my! What is this? He hesitated. You really didn't have to. George glanced down, looking slightly embarrassed. It's just something small, he mumbled. Then, after a moment of hesitation, he added, This summer has been one of the best I've ever had. I wanted to do something to celebrate your birthday. It's the least I can do. Carefully, Ivo unwrapped the box. Inside, he found all his favorite chocolates. George smiled shyly. I got them from your favorite shop, since I ate all of yours at the lake when you bought them for us. I figured it was time I showed some appreciation. As he spoke, Ivo noticed something in George's expression. Something vulnerable, a sadness he had never seen before. Ivo felt his heart swell. Thank you so much. No one has ever been this kind to me before, and I've had the best summer ever too. Thank you for being my friend. His voice grew softer and softer until it was barely above a whisper, almost as if he was speaking to himself. Wow, all my favorite flavors. George's face reddened. Yes, you remind me every time I steal them from you. They both laughed. That night, as Ivo lay in bed, he thought about the blue fairy. Maybe he was real after all. Maybe George might be the one. For the first time in a long while he felt hope. Closing his eyes, he pictured George's smile. Yet lingering beneath his hope was uncertainty. He knew how the kingdom viewed love between two men. He had no idea how they could ever have a life together in a world that expected him to take a wife. Restless, Ivo got out of bed and gazed out the window, lost in thought. A quiet longing filled his chest. A longing for love, for acceptance, for a place where he didn't have to hide. But as he stood there, staring at the distant lights of the city, his expression grew somber. The sadness he had hidden from his family and everyone around him settled heavily on his shoulders. Finally, he returned to bed, curling up under the covers. Silent tears slipped down his face as he buried his head into his pillow, wishing, just wishing, that one day this ache in his heart would finally go away. A boy who wanted to be a Cinderella. Chapter 4. Truths Unspoken. An announcement spread through the kingdom, filling the air with excitement. The younger prince was searching for his future princess. The news traveled fast, and soon preparations for the grand ball were underway. Until now, no one had seen the younger prince, and rumors swirled about his mysterious absence. Many had speculated that he would never take a bride, so this announcement came as wonderful news to the ladies of the kingdom, many of whom hoped to marry into the royal family. Instead of swimming in the lake, Ivo and George now spent their days strolling along the forested paths that led into the mountains. They would sit together for hours, sometimes until the sun had set, talking about everything: literature, music, theater, and even fashion. Other times, they simply sat in silence, watching the world go by. Each time their eyes met, Ivo felt something stir deep within him, something that told him this was more than friendship. But he waited, hoping that one day, George would say the words he longed to hear. Yet, despite his excitement, doubt crept into his mind. What if George is not like me? Some nights Ivo allowed himself to dream, believing that one day, he and George would be together forever. Other nights he lay awake, quietly crying, wondering if this was all just another cruel joke from God. He didn't know how he would bear it if George were to marry a woman. That evening, as they walked along the lakeside, George was quieter than usual. "You've been very quiet today," Ivo said, trying to read his expression. George hesitated. I'm sorry. But I'm fine," he replied, though his face told another story. His eyes, usually bright and full of warmth, were troubled. "I won't have much time to meet you anymore." Ivo's heart sank. "Did I do something to upset you?" George shook his head. "No, it's not that. It's just, soon I'll be expected to meet a suitable lady. He hesitated before continuing. "My father has made arrangements for me." Suddenly, George's voice faltered, and his expression grew pained, as though he was about to cry. Ivo froze. His heart clenched so tightly it felt like it might stop. "You fool," he thought bitterly. "You did it again, thinking a boy might like you." But he forced a smile. "Oh, that's exciting. You never mentioned your family before. Tell me more." He pretended to be happy for George, even though his soul felt like it was crumbling inside him. Over the years he had mastered the art of hiding his pain. George hesitated again, frustration flickering across his face. "I don't want this. My father is forcing me because he thinks it's important to make people believe we are a happy family. He says I need to settle down, but I never wanted this." Ivo's heart ached, but he could not bear to see George so upset. "I understand. After all, this happens to everyone eventually, doesn't it?" He tried to sound light-hearted. "We can still be friends, we can still catch up from time to time." They continued walking, but for the first time, there was silence between them. Ivo swallowed the lump in his throat, and forced himself to congratulate George, even as his vision blurred with tears. That night, when he returned home, he skipped dinner and went straight to his room, shutting the door behind him. His mother, concerned, knocked gently. "May I come in, son?" she asked softly. This was not the first time she had seen him like this. She knew that Ivo had poured his heart into something, only to have it broken once again. She pushed the door open and walked over to his bedside, sitting down beside him. Gently, she stroked his hair. "Did it happen again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ivo nodded, unable to stop the tears from falling. "Mum, why am I so foolish? Why do I keep thinking I will find my prince?" His sobs shook his body. He felt as though the world was closing in on him. Shame crept over him, wrapping itself around his chest like a heavy chain. "Why does God hate me?" His mother wiped away his tears. "Oh, my love, we are here for you. We love you. You are special to us." She sighed, the pain evident in her eyes. "I know this must be hard for you, but the world may not yet be ready for someone like you." Ivo's mother was heartbroken. She wished she could take all of his pain away. She wished the world could see her son the way she did. Kind, gentle, and full of love. She cupped his face and whispered, "Because of you, our family is strong. Because of you, we know love. No one could ask for a better son, brother, or uncle." That night, as Ivo lay in bed, he made a decision. No more. No more love. No more foolish dreams. No more being stupid. That night, Ivo decided he was going to change, so that his heart would never be broken again. A boy who wanted to be a Cinderella. Chapter 5, The Grand Ball. The moment had finally arrived. The night of the Grand Ball. It was the event every eligible young lady had been waiting for. The city had come alive with excitement. The streets were filled with the sound of carriages rolling by, horses trotting, and lively chatter as people hurried about. Young men gathered along the roads, eager to catch a glimpse of the elegantly dressed ladies making their way to the ball. Curious, Ivo thought, I would love to see who the young prince is. For some reason, it was the first thing in a long time that had truly sparked his interest. Since his final goodbye with George, Ivo had withdrawn into himself, refusing to step outside his bedroom. He had spent most of his days and nights sleeping, lost in an unshakable sadness. His mother had been worried sick, watching helplessly as her son shut out the world. So when she saw a flicker of excitement in Ivo's eyes for the first time in weeks, she was relieved. Whenever Ivo was heartbroken, he tended to retreat, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months. But eventually, he always found a way to bounce back. That evening, as he sat by the window watching the commotion outside, an old childhood friend, Tom, arrived at the house. Tom was getting ready to attend the ball and had not seen Ivo in ages. "Ivo, there you are!" Tom greeted him, his voice light but laced with concern. "I haven't seen you in forever. You're losing weight again." Ivo gave him a small smile. "Hi Tom, how are you?" "I'm good. Look at how busy the streets are today. And all the lovely young ladies." Tom's grin widened as he looked out the window. "They're all dressed up for the big night." Ivo tilted his head. "Are you heading to the grand ball? Were you invited?" "Lucky me. Yes, I was," Tom said proudly. "Oh, I thought only ladies were invited. How did you get an invitation?" Tom puffed out his chest, clearly pleased with himself. "Our symphony has been rehearsing non-stop for weeks. The prince personally requested amateur musicians to play at the ball. He wanted to give young performers a chance to showcase their talent. Our group was selected." Ivo's mind sparked with an idea. "Tom, can I come with you tonight?" Tom blinked. "What?" Ivo took a deep breath. "I've never been to the castle before. I've never been to a ball. It would mean the world to me if you could take me. Please?" Tom hesitated. Ivo and Tom had been neighbors since childhood. And if Ivo was honest, Tom was probably his only real friend. Tom had always protected him, standing up for him when he was teased or bullied. Once, long ago, Ivo had harbored a crush on him, but over time he realized that Tom only liked girls. And yet, unlike many others, Tom had never judged him. He never seemed to care whether Ivo wanted a prince or a princess. To him, Ivo was simply Ivo. Tom sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Fine. But you'll have to follow my instructions. I only have 10 minutes before I need to leave. I have to be there before the ball starts for our final rehearsal. Tonight is really important to us." Ivo beamed. "You're my favorite friend," Tom chuckled. "I'm probably your only friend." Chapter 6. The Curtain Falls. Ivo and Tom walked toward the castle, catching up on everything that had happened in their lives. Ivo shared his story about George while Tom listened quietly. As Ivo spoke, his eyes welled with tears again. Tom felt sorry for him. He never cared about who Ivo loved. He only cared that his friend was hurting. Looking at Ivo, Tom said firmly, "Listen, I will always be your best friend. You can always come and talk to me. I will never judge you or ask questions you don't want to answer. But I promise you this, I will always be here to listen whenever you need me." Ivo felt warmth in his heart. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear those words. Tom pulled him into a hug before they continued toward the castle. As they walked, Ivo looked up at the mountain. The sky was clear, and the setting sun painted the horizon in brilliant shades of orange. Wiping his tears quickly, he took a deep breath. The castle was just ahead. At the entrance, Tom handed a piece of paper with a royal seal to the guards. One of them looked at the paper, then up at Tom. "Who is Thomas Richard Johnson?" the guard asked. "That's me," Tom said. The guard then turned to Ivo. "And where is your invitation?" Ivo froze. Embarrassed, he stammered. I lost it. I couldn't find the paper." The guard narrowed his eyes. "And you are?" "Part of the orchestra." No, Ivo quickly replied, lying without much thought. "I'm assisting with logistics." A tall, muscular guard studied Ivo suspiciously. With his fair skin, delicate frame and soft features, he didn't look like a servant, nor did he seem like a thief. "And what exactly will he be helping with?" the guard asked, turning to Tom. "Small tasks," Tom replied quickly. "Making sure the musicians have the right sheet music, organizing instruments, bringing water, ensuring the orchestra plays at the right moments during the ball." The guard grunted before stepping aside. "Fine, but make sure he stays out of the main ballroom once the event begins. And next time, if you ever get invited to the castle, don't lose your letter." "Yes, sir," Ivo quickly responded, bowing deeply to show his appreciation. A second guard led them inside. As they stepped into the castle, both Ivo and Tom were speechless. The castle was magnificent. The polished maple floors gleamed under the glow of grand chandeliers. Tall windows were draped in luxurious fabric, casting golden light across the hall. The pillars were carved with intricate designs, and the orchestra's seats were covered in rich velvet, with gold-plated music stands placed before each one. Ivo's mouth hung open. "Wow, he whispered in awe. Shh, Tom nudged him. Not so loud. Sorry, Ivo murmured, still mesmerized. They reached a narrow corridor where a guard pointed them toward a door at the end. That's where the rehearsal room is, he said. Tom turned to Ivo and whispered, All right, from this point on, you're on your own. I don't know you. Ivo smirked. Noted. Tom gave him a quick nod before disappearing into the rehearsal room. Left alone, Ivo found a dark corner where he could stay unnoticed. He sat on the cold maple floor, a slight chill running through him. Not sure how long before the ball starts, he muttered to himself. As the musicians rehearsed in the background, Ivo's mind drifted to George. He had no idea where George lived or how he could find him. Why had I never asked about his family? His chest ached. Every night when he was alone, all he could think about was George. His face, his smile, their time together. A fresh wave of sadness washed over him, and tears began streaming down his cheeks. Exhausted, both emotionally and physically, Ivo felt his body grow heavy. His eyelids fluttered shut as he drifted into sleep. Just as he was about to doze off, Hi, it's me. Do you still remember me? A soft voice whispered in his ear, sending a familiar warmth through his body. A neon blue light flickered to life before him. Ivo gasped. I wasn't dreaming after all. Just like the first time, the blue fairy quickly cast a spell to silence Ivo before he could scream. Shh, the fairy warned. Promise me you won't scream like the last time, and I will release the spell. Ivo nodded eagerly, placing his right hand over his heart in a silent vow. The fairy smiled. All right then. With a flick of his fingers he released the spell. Ivo's voice returned in a breathless whisper. You're real. The blue fairy floated closer. I am here because you have passed your tests. Ivo's eyes widened. Tests? Despite all the hardship, you have never changed who you are. Despite disappointment, hurt, and sorrow, you still know how to love. And now, there is one final test you must face before you receive your reward. You don't have to, the blue fairy replied. But tonight, you will undergo a transformation unlike anything you've ever imagined. It will take courage and honesty. You will be judged, misunderstood, and laughed at. But this is your moment to decide who you truly are. Ivo's excitement faded into fear. His face fell. Oh no, I don't think I can do this. The blue fairy placed a hand on Ivo's shoulder. Worry not. Everything will be revealed to you tonight. And remember, you are stronger than you think. Trust that we are watching over you. Ivo hesitated. Is this the last time I'll see you? The fairy's glow flickered. Perhaps. But remember, everything you need is already within you. Ivo reached out. But before he could grasp the fairy's hand, the blue glow faded, vanishing into thin air. This time he knew he wasn't dreaming. His heart raced with excitement, but also with fear. What did it mean? The final test? Everything will be revealed tonight? Ivo turned toward the rehearsal room, searching for Tom. But Tom was too focused on his music. Oh no, Ivo realized. I wasn't supposed to be here. He quickly retreated into the shadows, feeling nervous, but also, for the first time in a long while, excited. Something big was about to happen, and whatever it was, Ivo had no idea how much it would change his life. Running from love. As the clock struck 6, guests began to arrive at the castle. The end of summer brought a golden autumn glow, with the last rays of sunlight streaming through the grand windows, casting intricate patterns on the polished maple floors. The symphony played an elegant melody, setting the perfect atmosphere. Everything was picture perfect. From where Ivo stood, hidden behind the thick velvet curtains, he peeked out at the grand hall. Laughter and soft chatter filled the space as noble ladies arrived, their gowns shimmering under the golden chandeliers. One by one, each lady was introduced by the herald, stepping into the castle with grace and beauty, each hoping to be the one chosen by the youngest prince. Their families whispered excitedly, their ambitions wrapped in hope, praying their daughters would catch the prince's eye. Ivo watched, his heart sinking. For the first time he felt truly out of place, like he did not belong to this world. He sighed. Waiters moved elegantly through the hall, carrying trays of champagne and platters of delicacies most common folk could only dream of tasting. His stomach grumbled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten all day. Then, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. The trumpets blared, followed by a deep drum roll to command the attention of the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, the royal announcer declared, His Majesty, the King, and Her Majesty, the Queen." The crowd bowed as the king and queen entered, their presence regal and commanding. Behind them followed the elder princes and their wives, each adorned in royal splendor. Finally, the most anticipated name was called. And now presenting His Royal Highness the youngest prince, Prince Erwin George V. The moment the name was spoken, Ivo froze. His breath caught in his throat as he watched a young, handsome man descend the grand marble staircase. It was George. Everything about him was exactly as Ivo remembered, except for the elegant royal garments that made him look more mature, and something else. Something missing. The luminance he once carried, the carefree joy, was gone. He looked thinner, burdened, like a man carrying a weight too heavy to bear. Ivo's heart pounded. He couldn't believe his eyes. Sadness wove through him like a cold mist. Prince Erwin walked slowly, his expression unreadable, his gaze lowered. The grand symphony played a perfect harmonious tune, yet there was something about his posture. Something sad, something hesitant. Then, before he could stop himself, Ivo gasped, "George." The name echoed loudly. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned toward the source of the voice. The king frowned. "Who is George?" Prince Erwin's entire body stiffened, as if he had been struck by lightning. His face paled, his breath hitched. And yet, for a brief moment, his eyes sparkled, as if hearing his true name again had awakened something in him. Ivo slapped a hand over his mouth, his heart pounding in terror. "What have I done?" The prince turned sharply in the direction of the voice, toward the curtain where Ivo was hiding. His gaze was filled with shock, but also something deeper, something unspoken. Ivo took a shaky step backward, panic surging through him. "I need to get out of here." But before he could move, his foot caught the edge of the curtain. The whirl tilted. "Reap!" The heavy velvet fabric collapsed, pulling Ivo down with it. Gasps filled the grand hall. The entire noble assembly turned toward the spectacle. Ivo lay sprawled on the marble floor, tangled in a mess of red velvet. Prince Erwin took a step forward, his eyes wide. "Ivo?" Someone in the crowd whispered, "Isn't that the strange boy who wanted to marry a prince?" Laughter erupted. The whispers spread like wildfire, turning into murmurs, then into quiet mockery. Ivo's face burned with humiliation. He looked up to see the sea of noble faces staring at him, some amused, some horrified, others disgusted. They were laughing at him, like he was the entertainment of the night. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes desperately searching for an exit. Then, a sharp voice cut through the laughter. "Who is this rat?" the king demanded. Ivo's heart clenched. Then, to his astonishment, Prince Erwin stepped forward. "His name is Ivo," he declared firmly, "and he is my best friend." Silence. Everyone now stared at the prince, not in amusement, but in disbelief, with hints of disapproval. Then, suddenly, Erwin ran after Ivo, his voice urgent. "Please, stop and listen." But Ivo, tears streaming down his face, didn't stop. "You lied to me," he shouted. "You lied to me." Prince Erwin panicked. "No, I didn't. I never did. I never wanted this ball, Ivo. I want to be with you." Ivo stopped. A confession. The words he had longed to hear. But instead of joy, confusion and anger swirled inside him. How could this be real? How could he have been so blind? The entire hall gasped. Someone muttered, "That's disgusting." Then, the Queen's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Who said that?" Silence. The eldest prince stepped forward, attempting to smooth over the situation. "Erwin, enough. Stop this joke." But Erwin stood his ground. "This is not a joke," he said. "I have been spending my days with Ivo at the lake, behind the palace gardens. I never told him who I was, because I was afraid of this moment. But I will not hide anymore." Ivo's breath hitched. Now, he understood. The lake had always been quiet because it was part of the royal gardens. He had unknowingly been spending time with the prince all along. "Please don't leave," Erwin begged. Then, he turned to face the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry," he said. "This ball was never my idea. It was my father's. You can all leave now. I have no intention of finding a princess tonight. Not tonight. Not ever." "Stop!" Ivo's voice cracked. "Don't you understand? This is wrong." Prince Erwin's face fell. Wrong? His voice was barely above a whisper. Tears welled up in Ivo's eyes. Wrong, like everyone says. Wrong, like I've been told my whole life. And I am wrong. The sound of laughter from the past echoed in his mind. The childhood teasing, the pointing fingers, the judgment that had chased him his entire life. He had to get away. Suddenly Tom was beside him, running after him. Ivo, wait! Back inside the ballroom, Prince Erwin stood on the grand staircase, his expression filled with sadness and frustration. Turning to face his father, he spoke with quiet defiance. This is not wrong, this is love. Pure, without boundaries, without conditions. I want to be with him as much as you wanted to be with Mother. And unlike all these noble families, he never cared that I was a prince. That never mattered to him. Then, Erwin dropped to his knees, exhausted, burdened by the weight of it all. For the first time he allowed himself to be vulnerable. For the first time he had nothing left to hide. Two mothers, one hope. The night of the ball had become the talk of the kingdom. The secret was out. The dam had been broken. Prince Erwin did not want a wife. He wanted a husband. At first, the king's greatest fear led him to hide Erwin away from the public eye, ashamed of the scandal. But instead of retreating into silence, something unexpected happened. More and more young men and women across the kingdom began to openly declare their true feelings, who they loved, who they wished to marry. Where the monarchy had once seemed outdated and irrelevant, struggling to capture the hearts of the younger generation, Erwin's defiance brought a newfound energy to the kingdom. The courage of one prince had sparked a revolution, a movement of love without restrictions. In the city square, young people gathered before the town hall, their voices rising in unison. Love is love, without any boundaries. Ironically, the unexpected movement had turned the tide in the king's favor. His popularity soared, not because he had led the cause, but because he had not stood in its way when Erwin took his stand. The palace made an official announcement. Prince Erwin would not be seeking a princess, and there would be no future royal balls for matchmaking. Yet, despite the waves of celebration, Erwin had not left his room for days. Trays of untouched food remained outside his door. The prince, once the most considerate and beloved among the palace staff, was now a prisoner of his own sorrow. The servants, who had always adored his kindness, slipped notes beneath his door, whispered encouragement through the keyhole, and knocked gently, just to let him know they still admired him. But Erwin remained silent. Every day the queen knocked softly on his door, her heart aching. "Erwin, my son, please talk to me," she pleaded. From behind the heavy wooden door came a tired, hushed voice. "I'm still alive," he muttered bitterly. Meanwhile, across town, Ivo had also locked himself away. He refused to leave his room, his mother growing sick with worry. She had seen him through heartbreak before, but this was different. This time she wasn't sure if he would bounce back. His sisters gathered at the house, calling an emergency family meeting. They took turns staying by his side, ensuring he ate, helping him bathe when he was too weak to do it himself. But Ivo did not speak. Back at the palace, the queen stood outside Erwin's door once again. That evening she knocked lightly and, with a soft voice, began to sing the lullaby he had loved as a child. "My little twinkle stars, it's me, your mother. I brought your favorite hot chocolate. Please, open the door. I am worried sick about you." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, just as she was about to turn away, the door creaked open. The queen's breath hitched as she saw her son's face. Pale, gaunt, drained of all color. He looked weak, as though he had barely eaten or slept. Without hesitation, she set the cup aside and pulled him into a tight embrace. "Oh, my love, why are you doing this to yourself?" she whispered, tears slipping down her face. Erwin let out a shuddering breath, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mum, I don't know what to do anymore. I can't stop thinking about him. His face, the way he looked at me, how disappointed he was. How people laughed at him, how I let it happen, how I never told him the truth." His voice grew louder, more frantic. "Where is he? Does he hate me? Will he ever forgive me?" Tears rolled down his cheeks as he collapsed into his mother's arms. The queen wiped his tears gently. "My son, this is all my fault. We should have listened to you instead of forcing you into this. I will never forgive myself if anything happens to you." Erwin sniffled. "But the kingdom. Father. The Queen chuckled softly. Your brothers are already fighting over the throne. They seemed quite relieved that you're out of the competition. Erwin sighed. Mom, you know I never wanted to be king. She nodded. Then, tell me, my love, what can I do for you? Erwin's voice cracked. I feel lost. And Ivo, I don't think he'll ever forgive me. The Queen cupped her son's face. Listen to me, the entire town is talking about you. Erwin let out a hollow laugh. I know, I'm an embarrassment. No, my love, she corrected. The young people admire you, and Ivo, that's his name, right? Erwin nodded, his lips twitching into a faint smile at the sound of Ivo's name. The Queen smiled back. The people see you and Ivo as their heroes. You have no idea how many people now feel seen because of you. For the first time in days, hope flickered in Erwin's eyes. But what about Ivo? He asked. I don't care about the kingdom, I just want to know if he's okay. That night, Erwin fell asleep with his head in his mother's lap, just as he had done as a child. As she stroked his hair, she made a silent promise. She would not stand by and watch her son suffer. She had to do something. In Ivo's house, his mother prepared breakfast while his sisters took turns watching over him. Since the ball, they had cared for him in shifts, making sure he was fed, helping him wash, sitting by his bedside, hoping he would speak again. Suddenly, a loud knock on the door made everyone jump. Who is it? Ivo's mother called, wary of early morning visitors. A strong, commanding voice answered. It's her. A pause, then, the voice softened into something almost gentle. A friend is here to see Ivo. Before Ivo's mother could respond, the door swung open. A woman entered the house, her elegant presence undeniable. Though she wore a large cloak that concealed her, it was impossible to hide her regal aura. Ivo's sisters gasped. Yee! Your Highness! The Queen lifted a gloved hand signaling for silence. No, please. I did not come here as a queen. She paused, as if carefully choosing her words. I came here as a mother. Ivo's mother stepped forward, instinctively shielding her son. Please, she whispered. Spare my son. I know he has caused trouble, but please don't punish him. He has suffered enough. The Queen shook her head. You misunderstand, she said softly. I am not here to punish Ivo. I am here, on behalf of my son, Erwin. At the mention of Erwin's name, Ivo's sisters gasped again. Ivo, open up, the Queen is here. Ivo's mother exhaled shakily, her eyes filled with tears. She turned back to the Queen. I can only imagine how difficult this must be for your son, she whispered. The Queen's eyes softened. For a long moment the two mothers simply looked at each other, neither saying a word. But in that silence, they understood each other completely. Because they had both carried the same fear. Because they had both raised sons who were different. Because they only wanted what was best for them. As the evening wore on, the Queen and Ivo's mother sat at the dining table, sipping tea and speaking in hushed voices. They shared moments of joy, heartache and worry, their words flowing effortlessly, as though they were old friends who had finally found each other. Ivo's sisters watched in fascination. They had never seen two women from such different worlds speak so intimately, not as a queen and a commoner, but as two mothers who deeply loved their sons. By the time the sun began to set, the women had come to an agreement. When they rose from the table, there was no sadness in their eyes. Instead, they smiled, not just at each other, but at the possibilities that lay ahead. The future of their sons had already begun to change. A long moment, the two mothers simply looked at each other. They didn't need to speak, they understood each other completely. Because they had both carried the same fear. Because they had both raised sons who were different. Because they only wanted what was best for them. Queen excitedly knocked on Erwin's door, instructing the servants to prepare his bath and dress him in fresh clothes. But Erwin sighed, sinking deeper into his bed. Please, Your Highness, I am tired. I have no interest in going to town to meet the supporters. The Queen sat beside him, her voice gentle but firm. Please, my son, just do this for me. Just this once. That's all I ask. You know your father has been worried that the kingdom will fall apart, because the younger generation sees him as old-fashioned. But you, Erwin, have given them something to believe in. Please, do this. Not just for us, but for all the people you've inspired. A future where they can stand up for themselves, find their own prince or princess, and love without fear. Erwin paused, deep in thought. Then, with a slow nod, he agreed. All right. Just this once. He hesitated before adding, and can we stop at the lake on the way back? I'd like to spend some time alone there. The Queen nodded, her excitement barely concealed. Meanwhile, at Ivo's house, his sisters were just as eager, bustling around to prepare him. But Ivo, looking frail and withdrawn, sighed. I'm not sure I can do this. His voice trailed off as he gazed at his reflection, his cheekbones more pronounced from the weight he had lost. His sisters knelt beside him, their hands clasping his gently. Ivo, do you remember when you were little, how you would cry and storm out of the room because you wanted to find your prince? How you cried yourself to sleep? One of them wiped a tear from his cheek. Don't you want something better for the little boys and girls who are just like you? They had told Ivo about the movement growing in the kingdom, the way his story had ignited a revolution. Though his heart still ached, for the first time in weeks, a small flicker of hope sparked within him, not for himself, but for the countless others who had once suffered in silence, just like him. Ivo lightly knocked his own forehead, whispering through his tears, for all the boys and girls who want true love. He wiped his face, and exhaled deeply. Both Erwin and Ivo climbed into their carriages, unaware of what awaited them. As they leaned against the velvet seats gazing out the windows, their thoughts drifted to the past, to stolen moments by the lake, laughter under the summer sun, whispered confessions. Though they had not spoken in weeks, their hearts had never truly separated. But after some time, Erwin noticed something odd. The carriage stopped sooner than expected. Peering out the window, he frowned. This isn't the town, he muttered. Then, turning to the driver, he asked, I meant later, not now. At the same moment, in his own carriage, Ivo turned to his mother in confusion. Mother, this isn't the town hall. Just then, Erwin heard another carriage approaching. His heart pounded. Somehow, he knew. Without thinking, he jumped out of the carriage, standing tall as dust from the road swirled around him. His face, once filled with sorrow, now held something else. Hope. His eyes widened as the carriage drew closer. Ivo? His voice trembled. Is that you? Are you inside? Inside, Ivo's heart leaped. That voice. He turned to his mother, his breath hitching. Mother, is that? Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. Yes, my son, it's him. Overcome with emotion, Ivo reached for her hands, gripping them tightly. What have I done to deserve a mother like you? His mother cupped his face, her fingers brushing gently over his sunken cheeks. And what have I done to deserve a son like you? Their foreheads touched, a quiet moment of gratitude passing between them. Ivo, his voice barely above a whisper, asked, How do I look, mother? She pulled back, studying him with love in her eyes. Then, with a smile, she said, You look like a little prince. Ivo took a deep breath, then leapt from the carriage. For the first time in weeks, Erwin saw him. For the first time in weeks, Ivo saw Erwin. They stood frozen, tears streaming down their faces. A whirlwind of emotions swirled between them. Relief, longing, the ache of time lost, and the unspoken torment they had both endured. Behind Erwin, the Queen placed a hand on his shoulder, lifting her voice so both of them could hear. You both have the kingdom's blessing. Erwin turned sharply, his breath catching. Did she really mean it? He hugged the Queen tightly, unable to hold back his tears. Mother, she smiled, nodding. Go on, my son. Holding back her own tears, she watched as Erwin turned, his heart pounding. And then, Ivo and Erwin ran toward each other. But just inches apart, they stopped, hesitating. Erwin's voice trembled. I am so. Ivo cut him off. No, it was me. I ruined your big day. I called you a liar. Erwin shook his head. No, you didn't ruin anything. You saved me, my life, my future, and so many others who dream of love just like us. You have no idea. When I met you, I knew you were the one. Ivo's breath hitched. Is that true? Erwin nodded. Yes. They say our love has changed the kingdom. People from other lands are asking to move here because of you, Ivo. Because of your truth. For the first time, Ivo and Erwin could truly be themselves. As they stood together, their mothers walked off, sharing a private conversation of their own. Erwin smiled, wiping his tears. "There's something I've wanted to say to you since we met, but I never got the chance." Ivo chuckled. "Oh, and what's that?" "Come," Erwin said, tilting his head toward the lake. "Let me show you around." Ivo laughed, shaking his head. "How foolish I was to think no one would ever come to this part of the garden." Erwin smiled and added, "Without you sneaking in, I never would have known there were places beyond the guard's watch. That's why I was able to invite you to dinner. My father never lets me leave the castle otherwise." Suddenly Erwin stopped. Turning to Ivo, his expression became serious. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I was so presumptuous. I never even asked how you felt about me. I just assumed." Ivo nodded, a teasing glint in his eye. "Yes, me too." They both laughed. And in that unspoken moment, their hearts intertwined, bound together in a love they no longer had to hide. A ceremony was held in the castle, attended only by the king, queen, and Ivo's extended family. Though Erwin and Ivo had wished for an intimate celebration, the news spread quickly. The king, unable to resist the opportunity, used the occasion to promote himself as a progressive and open-minded ruler. Despite the kingdom's newfound acceptance, there were still murmurs of uncertainty. Many had never imagined a prince marrying a prince, but love had already won. Before the ceremony began, a servant stepped forward, carrying a beautifully crafted shoe atop a silk cushion. Gasps rippled through the small gathering as curious eyes turned toward it. Erwin smiled, his gaze warm as he turned to Ivo. "I know your dream has always been to be like Cinderella," he said softly. "To fulfill that wish, I had these special shoes made for you as a symbol of love. As your husband, I will always stand by you, through thick and thin." Ivo gasped, "A shoe for me?" His face lit up with joy. Then, a whisper. A voice, soft yet familiar, brushed against Ivo's ear. "Do you remember me?" A sudden blue neon light filled the air. From the glow emerged a figure, not small, no longer a fairy. A full-grown man stood before them, his presence ethereal and radiant. Gasps filled the room. The blue fairy had transformed into his true form. With a warm smile, he turned to Ivo and Erwin. "Congratulations," he said, his voice deep and kind. "You have shown the world what true love is." Ivo's eyes widened in disbelief. "But I thought I failed the test." The blue fairy chuckled. "No, my dear. I told you that you had one last test, but what I didn't tell you was that the test wouldn't come from me." He turned to Erwin. "The final test had to come from someone else, from someone who had to be true to himself too." Ivo's breath hitched. "You mean?" The blue fairy nodded. "Yes, Ivo. Because true love isn't something I could give you. Only someone who truly loves you, someone willing to share a future with you despite the risks, could change your fate." And that person was Erwin. Ivo's heart pounded as the fairy continued. "All along, it was the two of you who shaped your own destiny. I was only here to give you a gentle nudge." Suddenly, Erwin's expression changed. His eyes filled with recognition. "You visited me when I was a child, but only in my dreams." Erwin paused, his voice barely above a whisper. "But why?" The blue fairy nodded. "Yes, I was there to check on you." The blue fairy turned to the king. "I know you have always loved your son. Your need to protect him came from fear. Fear that he would be teased, laughed at, and looked down upon. I know this has not been easy for you, which is why you have always been tough on him." The king remained silent, his expression unreadable. "Your heart ached because you knew what he was going through, yet you never expressed it. But deep down, you have always loved him." The king's gaze wavered, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. The blue fairy's voice softened. "By choosing to be brave, your son has freed you from the weight of that responsibility. He has given you something greater. He has shown the kingdom who you truly are. And because of his courage, people now see you differently. They no longer fear you. They respect you." The king swallowed hard, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You have gained the admiration of the younger generation, not because you commanded it, but because you allowed it, and that, your majesty, is your reward." The blue fairy stepped closer, meeting the king's gaze. "Sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting people walk their own path, not the one you have laid out for them." The king slowly exhaled, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. For the first time he truly saw his son, not as a prince, not as his heir, but as the man he had always been meant to be. The king, trying to hold back his tears, lowered his head. Then, as he lifted his gaze, his eyes met Erwin's. For the first time in their lives, father and son truly saw each other, their eyes locked, not with duty, not with expectation, but with love and appreciation. The fairy continued, his voice carrying a divine resonance. As long as this kingdom honors love in all its forms, as long as it welcomes those who seek to love freely, it shall never face poverty, war, or despair. This is my promise. The king, overcome with emotion, nodded in acceptance. Beside him the queen gently held his hand, a silent sign of unity. And with that, the blue fairy vanished into the light, his blessing forever sealed into the heart of the kingdom. Ivo and Erwin stood in the center of the room, hands clasped together, their hearts pounding. The day they had longed for, dreamed of, fought for, had finally arrived. With deep gratitude in their hearts, they made a silent promise to each other, to stand side by side, no matter what lay ahead. Because their journey was never just about love. It was about truth. It was about courage. And it was about staying true to who they were, no matter what the world said. And so, with the kingdom's blessing, with love on their side, Ivo and Erwin stepped forward. Together. Not just as two men in love, but as two souls who had finally found their home in each other. The end.